Despite the digital age in which we live, there is something undeniable about the tactile nature of cards. The experience of sitting around a table with friends or opponents and watching their expressions cannot be replaced. When you reach out to take a card from the deck, you place your hand on a multitude of possibilities. The card you pull is based upon luck, or fate, based on who you ask. Playing cards and tarot cards both employ design choices that are rooted in history. One would not exist without the other, and they both developed distinct visual languages by which we identify them. While one is mirrored to leave its value unchanged, the inversion of the other could spell calamity. Power unites the two. In one, you leverage it to succeed, but in the other, you give it over to an interpreter. What we know today as playing cards can be traced as far back as 9th century China, with its predecessor dating even further back in antiquity. However, the idea of images being placed onto paper-like substances for the purposes of playing games became more available after certain advancements in printing technology. After playing cards made their way through Asia, they eventually arrived in Egypt during the Islamic Mamluk dynasty via exploration and trade. These cards found their way into Europe around the year 1370 as personal possessions of the merchants who had returned from their travels. Since playing cards were hand-painted, they were more likely to be found in the hands of the wealthy. Over the course of the 15th century, not only would playing cards become more widespread throughout Europe, but with the ingenuity of German woodblock printing, they also became more affordable. By the 1480s, France was creating the designs on the cards using stencils, which accounts for the relatively simple and reserved designs of the suits, even as they appear today. Because of the hard work of local artisans and the invention of woodblock prints and movable type, the printing press launched the playing card industry into overdrive. Pretty soon, cards were everywhere, and it was just getting started. The suits that we associate with modern decks of playing cards, hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades, though they remain the most recognizable, were not the only ones. After the frustration of simply having to memorize which dominoes belonged to two classifications in the original Chinese game, eventually 4 suits emerged for the card version of the dominoes that were based around amounts of Chinese currency. Lu Rong, a Chinese scholar, described 4 suits in his writings: cash, or coins, strings of cash, myriad of strings, and finally, tens of myriads. Many believe that this Chinese expression of cards set the precedent for 4 suits in a deck of cards. Merchants and travelers who came through Asia had their own expressions of cards that cropped up in Islamic courts. Mamluk cards were intricate and ornate. It's not 100% certain how the Ganjifa deck, as it became known, acquired all of its suits. The Chinese coin suit kept its name. However, the string of coins became polo sticks. Some suggest that the cups suit comes from rotating the Chinese character from myriad of strings. The tens of myriads, understandably, became swords. Close in geographic proximity, Italy and Spain had versions of card decks that replaced the polo stick for a club, but keep the coin, cup, and sword. The Swiss had acorns, bells, roses, and shields. The German expression of playing cards was in flux. One deck dating back to around 1585 had acorns, bells, birds, and flowers. Over the course of time, the designs were consolidated to acorns, bells, hearts, and leaves. France was responsible for introducing pique, cœur, carreau, and trèfle, or hearts, diamonds, or tiles, spades, or pikes, and clubs, or clovers. The French cards had a distinct production advantage over the others. The suits were executed in just two colors, red and black. What about the royal figures who inhabit the face cards? Do the kings, queens, and jacks represent specific people? As far as can be discerned, the modern designs of the face cards have been sufficiently genericized to reach a broader audience. But there are examples of French decks that existed during the 15th century that illustrated more specific characters who embodied the qualities of the face cards. Based on the information I was able to find, here are the most likely people or characters depicted on some of these older French face cards. For the kings, you had Charlemagne as the King of Hearts, David from the Bible as the King of Spades, Julius Caesar as the King of Diamonds, and Alexander the Great as the King of Clubs. For the queens, you had Judith, who is a near mythological religious figure, as the Queen of Hearts, Athena as the Queen of Spades, Rachel from the Bible as the Queen of Diamonds, and either Argine or Argea, who is a kind of queenly template, as the Queen of Clubs. For the jacks, you had La Hire, who was close with Joan of Arc, as the Jack of Hearts, Ogier the Dane, who is a legendary figure who is considered to be a paladin of Charlemagne, as the Jack of Spades, Hector from mythology as the Jack of Diamonds, and either Judas Maccabeus or Sir Lancelot as the Jack of Clubs. Subsequent English versions of the face cards lost their individuality over time. When people hear tarot, they likely think of fortune telling. While this is the more popular association, it's not the earliest understanding of what it is. Around 1374, a collection of poems titled Trionfi, or Triumphs, was written by Francesco Petrarca, who was from Tuscany. A triumph was a parade or procession that had its roots in ancient Roman tradition. In this collection, the reader is treated to 6 different triumphs, each with a particular topic in mind. There are triumphs of love, chastity, death, fame, time, and eternity. Each of them is filled with characters from history or literature. Though this may seem disconnected, it's important to consider what popular topics, themes, and archetypes were present during the Renaissance. Tarot cards, as we know them, showed up around the 1430s in Italy. It began as just another variation on playing cards, except this one had a 5th suit called Trionfi, or the Triumphs, and a bonus card called Il Matto, or the Fool. When used properly, these 22 cards, later termed the Major Arcana, acted as the highest power cards, a suit of triumph, or trump cards. Each of these 22 cards displays some kind of character, quality, or situation. There is debate about where these distinct archetypes came from. A likely theory is that card makers during the Renaissance were inspired by elements from various medieval parades and pageants, that drew direct inspiration from Roman triumphs. Much like playing cards, a deck of tarot cards would have been more likely to be in the hands of the wealthy because of their intricate design. Some of the earliest examples of this type of card comes from multiple decks created around the mid-1400s. The Visconti deck, the Visconti Sforza deck, and the Brambilla deck. All of these early tarot decks are credited to an artist from Milan named Bonifacio Bembo. A tarot deck consisted of the oft-unnumbered Fool card, followed by 21 Trionfi cards, with ascending number value. The major arcana consists of the following trump cards, with variations on the titles, based on which version of tarot deck you're looking at. The Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot, Strength, the Hermit, Wheel of Fortune, Justice, the Hanged Man, Death, Temperance, the Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, Judgment, and the World. Then you had 4 suits of cards, which would vary based on geographic location, which consisted of 4 kings, queens, knights, and jacks, followed by the standard 10s, down to the 1s. It's worth mentioning that the Death card frequently being the 13th card may be one of the earliest unlucky associations with the number 13. Even though practitioners of tarot would later interpret the Death card as simply being the end of something to make room for something new, I do think that the imagery was too powerful to deny. People who used the tarot deck as a game already had the association, which would have grown stronger after tarot became associated with the occult. Death was a theme and a character that permeated the triumphs of the Renaissance. It would make sense that the number 13 would be associated with evil or unluckiness because of its direct connection with illustrations of death. By the 19th century, advancements were made in the design and layout of playing cards. This was where card manufacturers shifted to corner indices, decorated backs, and double-sided design. The design principles generated during this time went quickly from experimental to industry standard. There is, however, a single card that has not been mentioned yet. The card that changes the game in a major way. The Joker. There is disagreement whether the desire for a new highest trump card came from euchre or poker. Either way, card players in America in the 1860s wanted something new. Many of the early illustrations of the Joker share similarities to Il Matto, the Fool, and the Joker. One is often depicted as being led astray, while the other is often depicted as a trickster. Whether or not you enjoy poker, or having someone read your fortune, I think we can all agree that there is beauty to be found in the art and design of playing in tarot cards. There is a mastery to behold in the solid form of how playing cards and their face cards are laid out, an industrial brilliance. Then, with tarot, we see something perhaps a bit more wild. Images that conjure intrigue, fear, or hope, just at a glance. There is great detail and craft put into each and every one. Next time you pick up a card, whether by luck or fate, I encourage you to take a moment and appreciate the art that lies there in your hand. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.